Hello, folks, in the Stanley Ruiz Jazz Study Forum. I'm Stanley Ruiz. I want to quickly discuss the self-test quiz, self-test number 1, so that things could be a little clearer to those who are not familiar with that type of scale or mode or intervals. The question asks to build a scale on the note E, which is considered 1. In the scale you have 1 to 7, 8 being a repeat of 1. So E is 1. We are asked to apply a specific formula of 1, 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7, and 8 to the note E. So all those intervals 1 to 8, or let's say 1 to 7, will be subservient to the note E, which is 1. So E is the parent of that particular scale, or it can be viewed as a mode, but let's treat it as a scale in its own right. To understand scales, one has to understand intervals and how they are named. So what I would suggest or recommend to individuals who are not familiar with intervals and their names and how they are used to build things, there are basic books on classical theory that you can learn about intervals. And an interval basically is the distance in pitch from one note to the other. And an interval is always measured from a lower note. So let's take a couple examples. I jot down some notes here, so let me just get a little focus going here. Let's say we're looking at C. C is 1, just like in the quiz we said E is 1. But in this case, as an example, let's use C as 1. C goes from a low C to a top C, which is an octave. Okay? And an octave can be divided evenly by half steps. C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, B, and then C. So those are half steps, or what we call semitones. And that scale is referred to as a chromatic scale, which is the grandmaster scale from which all other scales are extracted. Right? It's sometimes referred to, there's a big name for it, called a supra-diatonic scale. Okay. So that there is, and it's also called a symmetric scale because all the intervals are equal. All half steps or semitones. So let's take this example. C to D is a whole step because between C and D there's a note which will be C sharp. So if C to D is a whole step, then C to C sharp is a half step. And a half step is referred to as a semitone, and a whole step is referred to as a whole tone or tone. Okay. So C to C sharp, now C sharp can be called D flat, as I mentioned in a previous lecture. C to C sharp can be called D flat because if you're going up the scale or up the ladder, it's a sharp, and if you're coming down the scale or coming down the ladder, it's a flat. right? And the word scale comes from the Latin word scala, which means a ladder. So you're either going up a ladder or down the ladder. Or and on the ladder, you can go up a half step or whole step. Okay. Now, the half step is also referred to as a minor second. C to C sharp is a half step or a minor second. Now, C to D is a whole step or a major second. C now to D sharp will be 1.5 step with which is called a sesquitone, and the word sesqui or prefix sesqui means 1.5. Okay, so C to D sharp, which is the same as E flat, so C to D is a whole step. C to D sharp now will be a minor third leap or sesquitone. C to E will be 2 whole steps, because you have C to D 1 whole step and D to E is a whole step, so that's a major third. C to F is referred to as a perfect fourth. C to F sharp now will be an augmented fourth, but the official term for it is a tritone, because to get from C to F sharp, you have to get 3 whole tones, tritone. C to D, D to E, and E to F sharp. 3 whole tones, tritone. But it is referred to as an augmented fourth. And a fourth up the ladder, in the next octave is an 11th, so you can call it a sharp 11. So it's a sharp fourth or an augmented fourth, or sharp 11 or an augmented 11th. This is just terminology. C to G now is a perfect fifth. C to G sharp now is an augmented fifth. Now you're going up the ladder, so you're going to call it an augmented or sharp 5. But if you're coming down the ladder, it could be called a flat 6 or a flat 13, because the 6 is a 13th way up the octave. Okay. C to A is a major 6. But C to A sharp, and A sharp is the same as B flat, is an augmented 6, right? Or if you want to call it commonly, it's a minor 7th or flatted 7. Okay? C to B is a major 7th. And C to C, well, we call it a perfect unison or prime. So those are just basics. You got to have that under your sleeve to be able to negotiate construction of chords, construction of scales, etc. Now, if you look at the construction of please excuse that loudspeaker there for a minute. Let it pass. And I know we're in lockdown and we need a fish van to supply us with our basic necessities. The building blocks of chords and scales are based on intervals. Let's look at a basic chord. C major. A major scale is built, or major chord is built on notes, 3 notes, which will be a triad. I mean, a chord could be 2 notes, which is a dyad. But generally, the basic chord is a triad, 3 notes, triadic movements in classical classical music, and triads in jazz is very, very common. Okay, so it will be based on the first, the third, and the fifth degree, or the fifth notes of a major scale: 1, 3, and 5. So 1 to 3, which will be C to E, will be a major third, or 2 whole steps, C to D and D to E. So C to E is a major third, and E to G is a minor third. So that you can say that a triad, the basic chord in music, is a stacking of 2 intervals, a major third stacked with a minor third. And that is, you have to get into your system to understand chord structure. Now, The quiz or the test asks to build a scale, whatever that scale name is going to turn out to be, on the basis of a formula of 1, 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7, and 8. So we are building it from E, which is 1, and every other interval in there, whether it's 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, so will be subservient to number 1, which is E. So what you ought to do in this case, well, of course, it becomes very easy after a while when you're dealing with this over and over and over for years and years and so on, that it becomes part of you and you don't have to really sit down and figure it out. E is 1. D now, this is now, when you're doing the intervals, you have to first write out the E major scale of 1 to 7, right? Or if you wish, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. That's the division of a major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And in the case of C, let's use this as a quick example. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. You notice there are no sharps and any flats. And because C is referred to as a natural key with no sharps and flat. And when you're writing a tune in the key of C, in the key signature, you'll see nothing there, no accidentals, nothing in the key signature. So it means it's a natural a note that you play. So every note in the C major scale is a natural note. It is not altered. Okay. Now, before I continue, let me just make another point here. There are certain scales that are basic to normal Western music, that is to say. You have the major scale, and then you have the harmonic minor and the melodic minor. Those are scales that are mentioned or used frequently in classical music. In jazz also. There are other scales that can be viewed as synthetic scales, hybrid scales, and what have you. And some of them have no name. You see? Right? So some scales, when you write it out, and they're neither of any of those that I just mentioned, where you can't really give it some sort of a nomenclature, it's because the scale is neither fish nor fowl. It could be anything, right? Or it could be a synthetic scale, where there's even the distribution of the notes or the intervals going up to an octave. Right? So, whenever you're going to do any kind of alteration to 1 to say 7, when you're making an alteration 1 to 7, you're going to have accidentals, as they call it. It's going to you're going to sharpen a note or flatten a note. So, if I look at the E major scale and I want to find out what is 2, 2 has to be F sharp, so that E to F sharp is a whole step. And if I look at F now, as I said, the interval is measured from the lower note. So in this case, E is the lower note. We're measuring it from E to F sharp. But if I'm going from F sharp to G, I'm no longer measuring it from E to G. I'm going from F sharp to G. I'm just going from note to note. Right? But we'll come back where we're going from E to each of those notes. So F to F sharp to G is a half step. G to A is a whole step. A to B flat or A sharp is a half step. B flat to C is a whole step. C to D is a whole step. D to E is a whole step. We have established that now. Okay? But when I look at the scale of E, the third note would not be a G, as is the case here. It would have been a G sharp. So, when you measure that interval, it will be referred to as a major third. But because this formula is asking for a G, which is a flatted third, right? It's no longer a major third, it's a minor third leap, 1.5 steps. E to A is a perfect fourth. E to B flat. Now E to B would have been a perfect fifth in the scale of E. But now you've been asked to play a B flat, which is a flatted fifth. E to C sharp would have been a natural sixth in the scale of E. But you're asked to play a C, which is a flatted sixth, so it's a flat sixth, a minor sixth. And E to D sharp would have been a major seventh. But you're asked to play a natural D, so you're flattening the D sharp you're bringing it down to a D, so that's a flat seven. Okay, so that's basically some basics on intervallic structure or intervallic configurations. Okay, having established what those notes are, we come up with on 1, 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7, and 8, we come up with the notes E, F sharp, G, A, B flat, C, D, and E. So we have solved the first part of the test. We have established the scale based on that formula. We have to give that scale a name. Just as how major has a name major, melodic minor has a name melodic minor, and harmonic minor has a name harmonic minor. And each one of those scales have various modes of those scales, right? In the case of C, the first mode is called Ionian, the second mode is called Dorian, the third is Phrygian, the fourth is called Lydian, the fifth is Mixolydian, the sixth, is called Aeolian, the seventh is called Locrian, and the eighth, which is one, is Upper Ionian. Basic, you have to know those things to be able to move forward. And it's amazing that at one time I was going through some of this stuff with a seasoned musician, and he says to me, why am I wasting my time learning all this stuff here? Because I play strictly by ear, and my ear is good, and I can hear things, and I can do things, and I can compose things, and I can, operate very smoothly. And I agree with that. There's no disagreement there. I'm not in variance with that, right? But and also he indicated that, and if I start learning all this stuff here, it's going to take away from my creativity. And again, maybe there's some merit in what he's saying. But I'm saying to you that unless you're a genius like Bach or Chopin and all these guys who have never been really schooled, and I'm saying schooled in inverted commas, because you don't have to be schooled in a brick and mortar institution to be educated in this music field. You can be schooled on the bandstand. And that is where I started, on the bandstand, before I started learning all this gibberish here, right? And particularly if you're on the bandstand with more experienced musicians than yourself, you will learn a lot. Wes Montgomery is a good example, right? A very good example. He was a genius, he had a good ear, he's born with a talent and so on, and he utilized that. But in any event, he learned music on the bandstand, playing with his other brothers, Buddy Montgomery, and whoever else he played with, Miles Davis and Dizzy Gillespie and so on over the years. Same thing with Joe Pass. Joe Pass was not a school guitarist, right? Miles Davis and the like, they started off in basic playing in choirs and in churches and so on and so forth, and then they learned. But I take one thing that I understood very clearly, that I learned a long time ago, is that Dizzy Gillespie said, as a quote, he says, learn everything that you can learn possibly under the sun, and just forget all of it and just start to play. And that is the bottom line in this whole thing, in this thing called music or jazz. You have to end up the bottom line to be able to play. But you cannot play what you don't know.